What's up, y'all? Thanks for joining me for another episode of Behind the Mic Bites. I'm your host, Wize Grazette, RPN Community Manager and podcast enthusiast. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, formerly known as X, at The Real Wize. Now, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Mandela Day, which is a day celebrating the life and all the things that Nelson Mandela did for South Africa and for the anti-apartheid movement. We're going to be talking about the South Africa that my generation knows and hear a few words from Big Warra from the Sobering podcast, who I had as a guest on Behind the Mic. So I just want to start here. First and foremost, Mandela Day. It is today, the day of this release, July 18th, and essentially it celebrates Nelson Mandela. Now, for those who don't know, Nelson Mandela, as my generation would know him, we would know him as the president of South Africa, but he was a anti-apartheid activist that went to jail for a long time. And then after the apartheid movement was defeated, he was then democratically elected into power from 94 to 1999. So first and foremost, I want to celebrate Mandela Day and share that with you. But also what I want to do is share some words from Big Warra. This part, I didn't add into an episode of Behind the Mic because my true north for Behind the Mic was to keep my episodes under 15 minutes. And I kind of didn't really do a good job of that midway through the season. So season 2 for sure is going to be bumped up to like 20, maybe 30 minutes and just have the description say under 30 versus under 15. But what I do to keep the episodes short is I trim pieces of it, and I have been sharing pieces of those on YouTube, but specifically these 2 clips haven't been shared anywhere yet. So this is a big exclusive. So in any event, without further ado, let me introduce Big Warra. So on today's episode, I'm joined by Maketwa, aka Big Warra, on the Sobering podcast. So Big Warra, welcome to Behind the Mic.
Thank you so much, Wize. Thank you so much. It's quite a privilege to be here. Yeah, man.
Real quick, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and the podcast that you're a part of.
Oh, cool. Real name, Maketwa, otherwise known as Big Warra, aka Blimbao Chicken Charmaine, and a whole bunch of other AKAs. That's me. That's what I do. I'm based in Johannesburg, not originally from here. Been here for about 15 years now. Yeah, I lived in Cape Town and Pretoria as well before that, but I'm originally from a place called Limpopo. So it's almost like it's not one of the popping cities in the country. So when I was growing up, I had to search for a lot of music on my own. So that's where movies and series came in. Like, when the credits roll and then you hear that song, you're like, fuck, what is this song? How can I get it? And then you're like, oh, okay, cool. They give the names and you write it down one day, hoping to stumble upon it. And then, luckily for us, as time went by, we had the internet so we could search for songs and stuff, And then magazines were another big part of my upbringing. Like there's a local magazine called Hat Magazine, which we were on the cover of. And then yeah, we're lucky enough to get the Source and Double XL in the country as well. So that also played a big role. And then some other magazines, local magazines, Y Mag, which was by YFM, a radio station, youth radio station. And then SL, which was like Student Life. And sort of all those things just sort of like broadened my view on like style and music and all those things, like an art, even influencing what I do on a daily basis as a 9 to 5 as a copywriter. So I'm in advertising. So that's what I do, like 9 to 5, and then the podcast as well. So yeah, it's just been an influence of like searching, like always continuously like searching for things like, okay, cool, there's this, what's next? There must be more, there must be better, there must be worse. You gotta go both ways, up and down, sideways, try to find as much as possible.
Now that's my guy, y'all. Listen, I've been working with the Sobering podcast since 2017. I actually helped bring the Sobering podcast over to Revolt Podcast Network back in 2023. But what I didn't know was just the extent of what South Africa was going through. And over the last 24 months or so, having seen what's been happening in Gaza and the apartheid that the Palestinian people are under, it's helped me draw contrasts and comparisons to what happened in South Africa and what was required to help defeat that. The South Africa that I see today, the ones that you grew up in, was not the South Africa of the early 1980s, the mid 1980s, the 70s and beyond, right? So how do you feel like things have been different for like your mom to your life now as South Africa has opened up, kicked out apartheid, at least publicly, and moved into a new phase in the country?
Man, I was born in 1990. That's the year Mandela came out of jail. So I'm not a born free. So we have what we call born frees, which were born in 94 when democracy officially kicked in. But it's hard for me to speak on the past. When I speak like to my mom, like yes, there were hardships, there were things here and there, but things were still there for them. But the opportunities that they had were quite minimal. Yeah, they became a teacher, a policeman, or a nurse, or something along in the government arms, something like that you served the community. But yeah, I'd say for me, the biggest one was like, even I think I touched on it earlier, just with what I was exposed to. I think that's the biggest difference. But otherwise, coming up like in 94 was 4 years. So I basically grew up with the born free. So I never experienced any of that. So yeah, but one thing I can definitely say just from the juxtaposing from the older people that I know is the opportunities to go for certain things and the knowledge and the access as well.
So because of the downing of apartheid and the democratic election of Nelson Mandela as president of South Africa, they were able to right some wrongs, not all, but right some wrongs in South Africa and provide more opportunities than civil opportunities for the South African people. So let's talk about some of the things that Big Warra has done and currently does in his day to day. Okay, so you said that your 9 to 5 is in advertising, right? So what kind of took you along that path as well too?
Natural progression, I think, just from the way I came up. I don't know how it is with you guys that side, but with us, there's like an immense pressure this side to be a doctor, to be an engineer or whatever, but just to get something solid. But funny enough, with my mom, after I completed, we call it matric, which is like 12th grade. After completing that, she didn't even like bother me about, hey, you need to go do this, that, and that. I initially wanted to be a graphic designer, but luckily I was good with writing, so I then went into advertising, did copywriting, and then that's how I got into that. But it's always something that it's along the lines of the things that I wanted to do. I mean, with some guidance, I'm not saying that I liked, but I'm just like coming from where I'm from. Nobody ever did this thing, so I didn't exactly. So I had to maneuver that world on my own. With my mom saying, "Okay, cool. Whatever you stumble upon or wherever you land, and let me know, and then we'll support you and let you go through with that." Happened to be advertising, which I fell in love with, really. And then to this day, and then also just to add on to the hustle of things, last year together with a friend of mine, we launched Company Culture, which is like events, an events company. So we're doing quite a bit on that front. So so that's also another thing.
Big ups to Mandela Day. Thank you, South Africa, for taking that charge to drive for independence for yourself. And I know it's still a path, and I know people will talk about the fact that there's still room to grow. There absolutely is. But I'm so happy to see that in my lifetime, most of my generation only knows a free South Africa. Thank y'all for listening to another episode of Behind the Mic Bites. You all can follow me, Wize Grazette, at The Real Wize on Instagram and Twitter, formerly known as X. I'm internationally known on the microphone as Wiz, Wizzy, and Wize, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Behind the Mic, powered by Revolt Podcast Network, is hosted by me, Wize Grazette. Special thanks to the Indie Creative Network and Storytime Studios for editing and producing this podcast.